Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Colonel Christopher Starling. I'm the Director of Military and Veteran Affairs here at the Marines Memorial Association. Welcome to the Marines Memorial Theater as we celebrate the 239th anniversary of the founding of our Marine Corps. We welcome all Marines and friends of the Marine Corps as we observe this time-honored tradition. Our invocation this evening will be given by a very special Marine. Many of you already know Father John Martin. Before joining the priesthood, Father John served as a Marine. He's a combat veteran, and in fact, he served in the same battalion, 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, with our President and CEO, General Mike Myatt, and the chairman of our theater board, Pete Paffrath. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the invocation.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we turn our hearts to you with deep gratitude on this special occasion when we celebrate the 239th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. We thank you for this great nation, which the Marine Corps has always been proud and honored to serve. We thank you for the Marines who have gone before us, especially those who have given their lives in service of their country. We take a moment of prayerful silence in honor of those Marines who have given their lives, for those missing in action, for those who have been wounded, and for the surviving members of their families. We lift up our Marines and all our military personnel who are presently deployed in dangerous areas throughout the world, especially in Afghanistan. Help them accomplish their mission and bring them home safely to their families. We ask your blessing on their families, whose great sacrifices match those of their Marines who are deployed. We ask you to bless our nation with elected officials who are worthy of the dedication of our Marines. Bless our leaders with wisdom and the courage to act on that wisdom in this ever more complex world. Help all of us citizens appreciate more fully that our nation is at war and that at this very moment, Marines are in very dangerous situations precisely for each one of us, not for someone else. Let us daily live in that awareness. Bless the United States of America. Help our nation live up to its great heritage, the promise of all its resources and the great sacrifices of its Marines and their families. Bless the Corps and our new Commandant, General Joseph Dunford. We ask your continued blessing on this wonderful enterprise, the Marines Memorial Association, General Mike Myatt, his staff, and volunteers. And lastly, we ask your blessing on this special evening, which is our expression of Semper Fidelis. We make all of our prayers with deep faith and confidence in you, Almighty God, from whom all blessings flow. Amen.
As you entered the theater tonight, you might have noticed by the door, the entrance to the theater, a lone table draped in black with an empty chair. And this is to remind us of our fallen comrades. Whenever we gather to celebrate, we also pause to reflect and to remember. And this lone table and its contents are symbolic. Upon the table rests a Purple Heart medal that reflects the shedding of blood in conflict and the ebb of life in battle. There are a set of ID tags on the table that are left blank, and those ID tags could bear the name of any of us here tonight. Slices of lemon on the bread plate remind us of the bitter fate of our fallen comrades, and salt upon the bread plate represents the tears of families shed for our fallen comrades. The inverted wine glass reminds us that our distinguished comrades cannot toast with us, nor can they join us in the festivities this evening, but they are not forgotten. A single lighted candle reminds us of the flame of eternal life and that their memory will be with us always. A small percentage of our population today chooses to fight our nation's enemies. And as a consequence of that choice, some have paid the ultimate price, thereby joining the list of heroes who built the noble legacy of our American armed forces. For those of us who carry on that legacy, it is our solemn obligation to remember and honor our fallen soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen. They might not be physically present, but they are with us in spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for a moment of silence in honor of our fallen comrades. Please be seated. So before we start our program tonight, and on behalf of General Myatt and the Board of Directors here at the Marines Memorial Association, I'd like to recognize a few of our special guests in no particular order. First of all, we have with us tonight Admiral Joe Servito, who is the commander of the 11th Coast Guard District, keeping our coast safe. Admiral Servito, are you here? We also are honored to have Susan Mannheimer, the Chief of Police for San Mateo. She's a Blue Star mom. Her son is a Marine. Welcome, Susan. We're also honored tonight to have Major General O.K. Steele, one of our icons in the Marine Corps, Vietnam veteran and former commander of the 2nd Marine Division. General Steele. My good friend is here tonight. He brought us the TV show Dirty Jobs, and he has a new TV show, Somebody's Gotta Do It, Mike Rowe. Also with us tonight, the youngest drill instructor in Marine Corps history. Now, how you become a drill instructor at age 17, that takes some talent. But you go to boot camp because maybe you lie about your age, and then you're so good there during World War II that they bring you onto the staff. So today we have with us, you might know him by his nom de guerre from his TV show in the 50s and 60s, The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp. We have with us, up from Hollywood, California, Hugh O'Brien. Thanks for coming, Hugh. And finally, I'm going off the script. My wife always hates this. But 60 years ago, we had an event here at this club, and it's worth marking. The Marine Corps loves to mark its quirky anniversaries, and this is one of them here at the Marines Memorial Club. 60 years ago, we had a very unique guest of honor. She, a guest of honor, was a native of Korea. She was the first and only equine guest of honor at a birthday ball in San Francisco. The horse that we know as Sergeant Reckless graced this hall with her presence that day. In the Korean War, Marines conscripted local horses to help move supplies, ammunition, food, water, and also to evacuate wounded Marines off of difficult terrain, the mountainous terrain of Korea. Sergeant Reckless was one of those horses, and in my estimation, this Mongolian mare, a racehorse that was drafted by the 5th Marine Regiment, is probably the most famous war horse in military history. The highlight of this horse's military career came in March of 1953 during fighting around an outpost known as Vegas Hill. In a single day, that horse made 51 trips up and down the hill to resupply multiple frontline units. This horse was wounded twice in combat and accordingly was awarded the Purple Heart twice. Reckless spent 9 months in combat, and so in addition to the Purple Heart, because the horse didn't get in any trouble, it also was awarded the Good Conduct Ribbon. That's tough for a female horse back in those days, I'm here to tell you. So the Marines gave that horse a really nice horse blanket, and the Sergeant Reckless wore not only her ribbons proudly, but her rank insignia on that horse blanket. From time to time, Sergeant Reckless ate her horse blanket and the ribbons. So in 1954, despite the initial objections of both the Customs Bureau and the Department of Agriculture, Sergeant Reckless gained entry to the United States legally. Let that be an example for immigration reform. She set foot on American soil in San Francisco on November 10th, 1954, and came directly to this club, where she was the guest of honor at the 179th birthday ball here at the Marines Memorial Club. The horse was wedged into the elevator, brought up to the 10th floor and the 11th floor, where she promptly ate not only the birthday cake, but the birthday decorations. On the picture here, I really like the top right picture. I did some research on this, and you have a very serious Marine marching the horse in, a slightly jovial Marine on the other side of the horse, and some guy laughing his butt off on the left side, not believing there's a horse walking into the lobby. This is in no way a challenge to General Kelly, but the guest of honor remarks that year were the shortest in Marine Corps history. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our celebration with a musical performance under the direction of Erich Stratmann, we are honored to feature Richard Evans on the piano, as well as returning vocal artist Rachelle Perry. Additionally, we are going to welcome Nova Jimenez, who joins us from Stanford University, and this is a special treat. She is going to sing for us a song that was written by her father, Joseph Merle Daig, who is a veteran of the Korean War. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Erich Stratmann and our talented musical ensemble as we mark the 239th birthday of the U.S. Marines.
I have seen a summer day that slowly opens like a rose along a quiet road that wanders by, and I have smiled and wondered where it goes. I have stumbled through the night alone, as any man can be, then found a silent canyon full of stars, and in my heart I heard them telling me I am home. The gentle wind, the rains that fall, the tallest trees, I'm part of it all. I've seen the silver mountain tops and golden prairies on my way. Now everywhere I go across the land, I stand so proudly in the sun and say, I am home. The gentle winds, the rains that fall, the tallest trees, I'm part of it all. I've dreamed of Eden all my life. I find it more and more each day. Now everywhere I go across the land, I stand so proudly in the sun and say, I am home. I don't know how many of you remember when I started singing for the Marine's birthday. Tom Payton was the chairman of the board at the time, and he came to me as a friend and said, "I'm tired of quartets coming in and singing patriotic music. Could you bring some entertainment, liven up this thing?" And I can understand that, because when you sing God Bless America, as an example, 100 times, and you were used to Kate Smith, or they become cliches. Is she hiding here somewhere? I didn't mean to use that as an example, but
Yes, you did.
they become cliches. And so I told Michael Allen I thought that this year we could sing American songs and do them in a way in which you would listen to the words again, and in a way that did service to the original idea involved. So Rachelle Perry, who is my colleague at the San Francisco Opera, will sing for you now.
As the storm clouds gather far across the seas, let us pledge allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land that's fair, as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with your light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet
So just as several years ago you heard American Hymn for the first time, America comes in new forms. And we are so proud tonight to introduce a song written by, and I don't mean just the words, I mean the music, the whole business, by a Korean War veteran who's sitting in the third row here. Would you stand? Let people know who you are. Then afterwards you can hit him up. And sung by his daughter, Nova Jimenez. You can talk if you'd like, or you can just lay it out there.
I think I'll just lay it out. Thank you.
A dream was dreamt so many years ago. A dream of somewhere anyone could go. Mother America, Miss Liberty, she waits with open arms. Oh, say, can you see? The only flag I knew was red, white, and blue. My life was young and bright. My country was the guiding light. She tried to tell the world how freedom rings. She tried to touch all human beings. Mother America, Miss Liberty, watch for her guiding light. Soon you'll be free. Once she was young, unscarred and determined to be the path to equality. Soon her voice was heard. Oh, come to me, away from the tyranny, away from the poverty. She gave us her word. And now the years have passed. Her image is marred. Her problems have amassed. She has been hurt and battle scarred. She has been jeered and looked upon with scorn. Her flag was burned and battle won. Her sons are buried from France to Italy and lie asleep beneath the sea. Mother America, she will endure. She'll always rise again. That you can be sure. Mother America, Miss Liberty, I'm always there for you, and I will always be. America, land of the free, I'm always there for you, and I will always Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plains. America, America, shining sea.
Oh, beautiful for patriot dreams that see beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Ladies and gentlemen, a message from the 36th Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Joseph F. Dunford, Jr.
A lot of folks ask, what do you learn from history? History teaches no lessons. What history does is provides a context so you can look to the future. In fact, there is no ability to understand the future except from the past.
Our history makes us want to be brave. Our history is rich with a legacy of Marines that have made the ultimate sacrifice and have been very willing to do so because of that bigger purpose that we're taught.
Happy birthday, Marines. On 10 November each year, wherever we are, we pause to celebrate the anniversary of our Corps and reflect on who we are, what we do, and why we do it. 70 years ago, when our predecessors paused to mark the anniversary of our Corps, they reflected back on a year of extraordinary combat in our amphibious drive across the Pacific. Despite the challenges and horrific conditions, Marines prevailed at places like Guam, Saipan, and Peleliu. On 10 November 1944, Marines look back with pride on their accomplishments, confident in their ability to meet future challenges.
During the Pacific Campaign, Marines fought many hard-won battles. From 15 September to 27 November 1944, the 1st Marine Division fought a determined enemy, 10,000 strong, on the small volcanic island of Peleliu.
I can remember, I don't think many of us slept the night before, anticipating a landing the next day.
As usual, they feed you steak and eggs for breakfast, which is a terrible thing to do to you because you're not used to it at all. When we went ashore, we got splashed several times with near misses.
I was up on deck through the night, and I remember seeing a crossfire of anti-aircraft fire in the sky like this, and then all of a sudden it blistered into flames, and I saw my first airplane shot down.
We were supposed to go in, and there was a Japanese airplane in there that crashed, and that was our pivot point. We were supposed to go in and pivot to the left and go north.
We were in the middle of setting up a short defense to see which way we're going to go further north. When we got hit, it wasn't long after that when we found out that we were surrounded.
If there was one thing I believe that is the highest honor for a Marine, it is the opportunity to fight alongside another Marine.
And if you look back through our history and you study our history, that's one constant, and that's one thing that always stands out, and is the camaraderie and the spirit of the Corps and the brotherhood of being a Marine and never failing and always coming through mission accomplishment.
A costly and controversial battle that would claim the lives of 1,252 Marines and nearly 11,000 of the enemy. In an environment of utmost savagery, the Marines prevailed. They were victorious because they were well prepared. They built mental and physical toughness. They were disciplined, and they trusted each other.
In 2004, 20,000 Marines deployed to the Anbar province in Iraq. Many Marines spent that birthday in combat at places like Ramadi, El Khan, and Fallujah.
Marines would once again find themselves sent to root out an entrenched and determined enemy, this time in the insurgent stronghold of Fallujah, Iraq. It was some of the heaviest urban combat Marines have been involved in since Way City, 1968.
We received our mission statement as to what we were supposed to do when we entered the city of Fallujah. And pretty much it was eliminate all threats for the most part in a nutshell. They had already received a warning of anyone that's left in the city would be considered combatants or whatever the case may be. And our mission was pretty much to clear the city of Fallujah to return it to the people.
During the course of that battle, when I was trapped and wounded, bleeding out inside the house, if I ever had any doubts during that period of making it out alive or making it out of that building, I always knew without any doubt whatsoever that I would make it out, because those Marines that were a part of that unit, I just had that much confidence in them and their abilities that they would somehow figure out a way to find a way to never leave Marine behind.
It's that camaraderie that makes us elite. It's the whole combined arms team. So here we are as a tank company. We couldn't move forward without the infantry to our left, to our right. We couldn't move forward without the logisticians supporting us, the fuel, the trucks, the bulldozers, the close air support, the artillery support as we were getting, the mortars. It all came together, and I think every Marine in that city felt that. They understood that.
The Marines who fought in the Battle of Fallujah were 100% warriors. They should always be proud of the jobs they did and how well they performed and who they were and what they stood for. And like all times in history, through all generations of the Marine Corps, those young Marines stepped up to the plate and executed and overcame great odds to become victorious in the end.
I think I would rather fight in the jungle, not Pelham type of jungle, but like rather on Guadalcanal type of jungle or the Korean type of war than Fallujah. What I know about it, the door-to-door stuff, you don't know who your enemy is. That had to be nerve-wracking. We at least knew where our enemy was most of the time.
Like Peleliu, the battle for Fallujah was the bloodiest of the Iraq War. Coalition forces suffered more than 100 killed and 600 wounded. More than 2,000 insurgents died and 1,500 were captured.
Looking back at our history, whether Marines are storming beaches in World War II or Marines are patrolling the streets of Iraq, our warrior mentality, what we stand for, our customs and courtesies, our love for each other, our love for the Marine Corps, and our history since the founding of this nation, the people that we've protected, and the ideas and the freedoms that we've fought for.
As we celebrate the 239th birthday of our Corps, Marines are in combat in the Helmand Province. And since we last gathered to celebrate, Marines responded to crisis in the Philippines, South Sudan, Libya, and Iraq. Some things change. This year found us in different climes and places than our predecessors. Our organization, our equipment, and our training have certainly changed since World War II.
What we do in recruit training, whether it's San Diego or Paris Island, what we do at Quantico in terms of training our officers and later all of our Marines, it instills something into each of us that's hard to explain.
I've lived on the side of civilian and child of the Marine Corps, so going in and gonna hopefully become a Marine myself, I know that the Marine Corps will properly train me for whatever situation is thrown my way. That's never been a question. You know, they're the best of the best.
Honor, courage, and commitment means to me that I'll be able to wear the title United States Marine on my shoulders for the rest of my life, no matter how long I'm in the Marine Corps, if it's 4 years or 20 plus.
I joined the Marine Corps because I wanted to accept the challenge. Nobody thought I could do it, so it was to prove myself and everybody else wrong.
As I look at and talk with some young Marines today, it's obvious that they're as eager to be a Marine as I was, and that makes me feel good.
The equipment of today that they have to fight with is awesome.
We've learned lessons going back from hand-to-hand combat in World War I to the house-to-house fighting in Way City in Vietnam. And so, you know, as long as we keep up with the lessons that we've learned from the Marines that come before us, we should be just fine.
Some things never change. Marines attack this year's challenges with the same courage, commitment, loyalty, self-sacrifice, and adaptability as their predecessors at Peleliu and Fallujah. For that reason, on 10 November 2014, we Marines can look back with pride in our accomplishments, confident in our ability to meet future challenges.
Marines are something special. They have a commitment to being at their best when the times are at their worst. They have a commitment to being the most ready when the nation's least ready. They have a commitment to each other that even at the cost of their own lives, they will stand by each other no matter what is going on a battlefield.
We are going to continue to live hard, train hard, and fight hard, providing our nation the capability to contain crisis, fill the gap, or hold the line. And like yesterday, we are ready to leave tonight.
Happy birthday, Marines, and Semper Fidelis.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for honors to General Kelly and remain standing for the entrance of colors and the playing of our national anthem.
Present. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, our national colors. Ladies and gentlemen, please join Erich Stratmann in the singing of our national anthem.
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. When the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. On November 1st, 1921, John A. Lejeune, 13th Commandant of the Marine Corps, directed that a reminder of the honorable service of the Corps be published by every command to all Marines throughout the globe on the birthday of the Corps. Since that day, Marines have continued to distinguish themselves on many battlefields and foreign shores, in war and peace. On this birthday of the Corps, therefore, in compliance with the will of the 13th Commandant, Article 38, United States Marine Corps Manual, edition of 1921, is republished as follows.
On November 10, 1775, a Corps of Marines was created by a resolution of Continental Congress. Since that date, many thousand men have borne the name Marine. In memory of them, it is fitting that we who are Marines should commemorate the birthday of our Corps by calling to mind the glories of its long and illustrious history. The record of our Corps is one which will bear comparison with that of most military organizations in the world's history. During 90 of the 146 years of its existence, the Marine Corps has been in action against the nation's foes. From the Battle of Trenton to the Argonne, Marines have won foremost honors in war, and in the long eras of tranquility at home, generation after generation of Marines have grown gray in war in both hemispheres and in every quarter of the 7 seas, that our country and its citizens might enjoy peace and security. In every battle and skirmish, the birth of our Corps, Marines have acquitted themselves with the greatest distinction, winning new honors on each occasion until the Marine has come to signify all that is highest in military efficiency and soldierly virtue. This high name of distinction and soldierly repute we who are Marines today have received from those who preceded us in the Corps. With it, we have also received from the eternal spirit which has animated our Corps from generation to generation and has been the distinguishing mark of the Marines in every age. So long as that spirit continues to flourish, Marines will be found equal to every emergency in the future as they have been in the past. And the men of our nation will regard us as worthy successors to the long line of illustrious men who have served as soldiers of the sea since the founding of our Corps.
The inspiring message of our 13th Commandant has left its mark in the hearts and minds of all Marines. By deed and acts from Guadalcanal to Iwo Jima, from Incheon to Korean armistice, to the interventions from Lebanon to the Dominican Republic, from the opening battles of Vietnam to the Mayan rescue, Desert Storm, and enduring freedom, Marines have continued to epitomize those qualities which are their legacy. The success which they have achieved in combat and the faith they have borne in peace will continue. The Commandant and our many friends have added their hearty praise and congratulations on this, our 239th birthday. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chairman of the Board, Marines Memorial Association, Mr. Barry Grimm.
Good evening. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Marines Memorial Association, thanks for joining us. We're glad to have you here. And as commitments around the world grow and fewer people serve, it's more important than ever that we work as a team with our sister services. So we want to welcome those of you who are veterans or currently serving from the Air Force, the Coast Guard, the Navy, the Army. Thanks very much for joining us. Welcome. It's now my privilege to introduce our guest of honor, General John Kelly. General Kelly is the Commander, Southern Command, one of the most critical and important leadership positions in the military today. He's responsible for the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. This is 46 countries and 16 million miles. General Kelly and his wife, Karen, are close friends of the Marines Memorial. They visit often. Their son, John, is a Marine Major in Camp Pendleton. The Kellys are also Gold Star parents, having lost their son, Robert, in Afghanistan on November 9, 2010. The Kellys come to our Gold Star Parents Weekend And as only Gold Star parents could, they share their experience, their empathy, and their compassion with other families who've lost a family member in service to our country. The Kellys have made this one of the most memorable and special events we have here at the club. We're so grateful to have them. Thank you. General Kelly has an unusual career and a very distinguished and long career. He joined the Marine Corps as a private in 1970, rose to the rank of sergeant, and 2 years ago was promoted to 4-star general. But General Kelly did not accomplish this on his own. When he was a young captain, a rifle company commander in the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit, he worked for a then young colonel, Mike Myatt. So we know he learned from the best. They trained together for 6 months and then deployed to the Med for 7 months. And those of you who have done that know what a friendship and a bond that gives. And today, 29 years later, we see two good friends together on the Marine Corps Ball. At every rank, General Kelly has held some of the most important and most influential positions in the Marine Corps. He led a rifle squad, he was a platoon commander, a company commander, and then finally, director of the Marine Infantry Officers Course. In 2003, General Kelly led a light armored task force that went from Baghdad to Tikrit and later secured the eastern and western borders of Iraq, following the complete destruction of the Iraqi armed forces. When in Iraq, then Colonel Kelly was promoted to Brigadier General. It was only the second time in Marine Corps history that in an active combat area, a colonel was promoted. The previous time was 1951, when a colonel named Chesty Puller was promoted to Brigadier General. General Kelly has earned his reputation as a warfighter, an innovator, and a visionary leader. He's a Marine's Marine, as comfortable talking to a squad about tactics as he was when he advised then Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta. Please join me in welcoming our special guest, General John Kelly.
Thank you very much. Well, two things before I start. One, I would have to say that the best job I ever had in my life, and I say this sincerely, was being an infantry sergeant. The other thing I have to say is I look at my very good friend and mentor, General Mike Myatt, to simply be mentioned in the same introduction with someone like General Myatt, to simply have the shadow of a man like General Myatt, to walk in his shadow, is a privilege. A lot of people ask me, do I have much in the way of a military background? And I guess I kind of do. My father was a private in the Army, was drafted before World War II began, and he left in 1946 a PFC, so he wasn't much of a rank grabber. He had two younger brothers, one of whom was Leo. Leo was a Marine. I'll get to that in a second. His youngest brother was Russell, who served in the United States Navy. Leo, when my father got drafted before the war started and was shipped overseas, was working for the railroad. All three sons of my grandmother worked for the railroad. They're all working men. But Leo had a deferment when the war started, and he was making pretty good money, and of course was going to make a lot more money with the war. And he gave my father a real hard time when he got drafted and left the railroad. Went from, $100 a week to $8 a week. And then when he went overseas. But Leo, the war caught up with Leo and guys like him. They didn't need the deferments as much anymore in 1943. And for those Marines in the audience who are recruiters, you know what I'm talking about. When my uncle lost his deferment in 1943, he went down to the Fargo building in Boston, took his draft physical. When he came out, and there was a Marine recruiter there, and the Marine recruiter said to him, look,
the war in Europe is really going to get bad. We're going to invade Europe probably in the next year or so. Of course, we did Normandy in 1944, but the war is going to get worse. And if you're really smart, you'll join the Marines and go to the Pacific. Now, I don't know how my uncle missed reading about Guadalcanal and New Georgia and those kind of things, but my uncle, always being my uncle, signed up in the Marines, and he landed on exactly one island in his life, and that was Iwo Jima. The big one, one of the big ones. And so that is my military family history background, of which I am very, very proud. But that's a good segue into the fact that as I grew up in a very, very working class part of Boston, all of the men in my life, for the most part, were veterans: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen. They were all veterans. And most of them after the war, by the time I was old enough to understand what was going on, they were, policemen and firemen, and like my dad, he was a postal worker and a railroadman. But they were working men. And they came back from the war and, raised families, paid their taxes, and frankly, made America what it is today, I think. They weren't all veterans, of course, but most of them were. And whether they were or not, there was something very, very unique about these young men. At the time, they were old men to me, of course. They were in their 30s. They worked so hard, and they had so little back then, but they loved this country in a way that, in many ways, has been lost, I think, in the modern era. But I have to admit, in all the discussions, in all of the conversations, the guys that caught my attention the most referred to themselves oftentimes as jarheads and leathernecks, and frequently just Marines. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but over time it meant a great deal to me. I'll never forget listening to these guys at Thanksgiving or Christmas, or just sitting on the stoop in the city during the summer as they drank their Ballantine ale and Schlitz beer. They would absolutely mesmerize us kids from all of the services of what they'd done, what they'd seen in their lives. The older men then, as I say, in their late 30s, would talk of places with names like Coral Sea, where the Japanese onslaught was stopped, or of Midway, where the Pacific tide was turned in our favor, of the Atlantic, where the battle of the U-boat against the U-boats made victory in Europe possible. We also learned that there were no graves for these sailors who'd lost their lives, and only the oceans marked the graves of thousands and thousands of these young men. And the former GIs of that war spoke of Kasserine and Salerno, Monte Cassino, Normandy, Bastogne, where millions and millions of GIs from all across America liberated a continent and helped to crush Hitler in what he thought was an impregnable fortress. But the Marines were different. At least they were to me as a boy in Boston in the 1950s. When they spoke, and they didn't speak very often, but when they spoke, they looked into the distance and with a reverence, and they oftentimes welled up. And they seldom mentioned the terrible battles that they'd been involved in, but they always talked about their Corps, about their pals, and particularly those that they left behind on those islands. They had names like Joe Pedalino, Al Hernus, Joe McCarthy, Bud Rogers. None of these names have you ever heard before, and you will never hear them again, but they represent to me the nameless Marines who went forth from this country and won World War II. And when the task was done, they came home, they dealt with their nightmares, and they never forgot. It was their esprit de corps and the devotion they had to each other and to the Navy corpsmen who served alongside them and who were no less their brothers, that even as a kid, and I was only 9 or 10 years old back then, but even as a kid, made me want to be one of them someday. And in all of these discussions I've described, there were other younger guys in the crowd drinking the same cheap beer and had the same kind of jobs. But these guys were only in their late 20s. They were the little brothers of the men who fought in World War II, and they talked of the North Korean communists and the Chinese hordes that they'd fought and defeated all the way to the Yellow River. Names like Dunford, not the Commandant, his dad, Joe Dunford, they come to mind here as I think about these discussions. But although the names were different, they had exactly the same DNA. Like their World War II brothers, they seldom spoke of the battles. But when others did, these young Marines, former Marines, I guess, their eyes would search out their brothers in the crowd who had once worn the Eagle Golden Anchor. They would nod to each other as they silently recalled the last-ditch defense at the perimeter, fighting their way across the beach in what was considered to be an impossible landing at Incheon. Vicious house-to-house fighting in Seoul, and most terribly of the battles around the reservoir, in a cold so unimaginable that to this day, when these now old men say goodbye to each other, they say exactly the same thing today as they said 64 years ago, and that is, stay warm. This is what they thought. But when they spoke, it was about Joe or Bobby or Jose. And of the silly things veterans like these think of, so they won't have to focus again on memories of what they'd done to their fellow man, enemies, but still men, what they'd seen and what they'd suffered, of the loss of friends so young, so precious, so dead. Finally, it was the turn of these young men, of their sons and nephews, rather, and they talked about a war 10,000 miles away. The Marines I knew of the 1960s were just back from Vietnam. Seldom did they speak of the battles they were involved in, of Khe Sanh, of Hue City, of the DMZ, of the Rock Pile, but they always spoke of their brothers, of the Marines and Navy docs who shared the dangerous lives that they experienced every day. Names like Tony Zinni, Mike Myatt, Terry Ebert, Van Riper, these were all names that were familiar to me as I grew up in the Marine Corps. They seldom spoke of the bad times. They always spoke of cold beer and the grab ass when they returned from the bush, and of R&R in Thailand and Australia and Hawaii. And they always, always, always talked about their friends, about their fellow Marines, living and dead, that they would never, ever forget. All I ever wanted to do with my life was to be a United States Marine. I got my wish. In all the years I've served, I've only had one really, really bad day. My life changed forever the day that I stepped forward and said I wanted to be a Marine. And I became a different person 3 months later when I'd earned that title at Parris Island, South Carolina. I am biased, I know that, what I am saying, because I am a Marine, and I've been a Marine all of my adult life. The Marine Corps is unique among all of the services, among all of America's fighting men and women. We have been accused by some of being a cult as much as a service because of the way we treasure our hallowed history, sport our impeccable uniforms, believe in our fighting prowess, revere those who came before us in our almost irrational dedication to each other. What we are is certainly not a job or an occupation or a career. For sure, we are close to very much to being a vocation. And we are not fair in how we train and how we organize and how we equip, because war, which is our stock and trade, is not fair. It is the most brutal and unforgiving human endeavor that exists on this earth, and so long it is part of the human experience, we need to have the best of American society trained to be Marines, to dominate war. We accept nothing less than perfection in war. We can't accept anything less. It is a sacred duty because the continuation of our country depends on it. The Marine Corps starts with a very, very unique self-selection process. Only 1% of American society today even considers stepping forward to serve. Of the 1% who serve or step forward, only a very small fraction centers himself on a Marine recruiter or an officer recruiter and says, I want to be a Marine. But that ain't good enough in our organization. The younger recruit or officer candidate will have to pass through a furnace, a crucible, that if they make it will affect a change in them that will last a lifetime because they will be forever a United States Marine. More than anything else, they will have our motto, Semper Fidelis, always faithful, seared into their souls. At home, on the battlefield, and for the wounded, and for the families of the fallen, always faithful. Like the men I spoke of earlier, from Guadalcanal to the jungles of Vietnam and beyond, we don't forget. We are always faithful. And you might ask yourself, why do they join, particularly after 9/11? Because the only thing in their future was a brutal war, to fight an enemy that is as vicious as any we have fought in our history. A war that will continue for decades into the future, and you should have no doubt of that. It may be inconvenient to some, but it is a fact. Our enemy has an illogical hatred for who we are, for who you are, for how we live our lives, for the toleration we have for our fellow human beings, for the toleration we have for everyone to live their own lives in the way they see fit, to believe and worship any God. We, they, as individuals, please, according to our own conscience, the way we want to raise our own children in the privacy of our own homes, in safety and without fear. These cruel and heartless extremists despise us because we believe all men and women are created equal in the eyes of God and the law, and that no man has a right to tell another man how to live. It is not about oil or about our support for our staunchest of allies, Israel or the Europeans or the Japanese. Nope, it is about who we are. He is irreconcilable, totally unwilling to compromise. He will not negotiate. Men like him must be sent to hell, and America's Corps of Marines know how to protect the nation and grant him his wish. And in spite of the fact that they are simply superb on the battlefield, you should take comfort, Americans should take comfort in the fact that our Marines are not born killers, but are good and decent young men and women who throughout our history have performed extraordinary acts of bravery and selflessness to a cause they have decided is bigger and more important than themselves. And that like all Marines who went before them in uniform, America owes them a debt that can never be repaid for protecting everything we hold dear as Americans. That any one of them could have done something more self-serving with their lives, but nope, they chose to serve. That to them it is more important to fulfill the most basic and cherished responsibility of any citizen, the defense of one's country, than to see to their own immediate well-being. I believe our servicemen and women today, and particularly our Marines, are the very best this country produces. That every American owes them a debt that can never be repaid. But Marines and service members don't expect payment. It's enough of a reward for us to have worn the Eagle Globe and Anchor. Our pride, our reward, our legacy is one of selfless valor, the country we live in, the way we live our lives, the mutual respect Marines have for each other, and the very freedoms our country frequently take for granted. And while serving and fighting, and yes, sometimes dying for us, they have learned what America used to hold as a common truth to its very core, that the real strength of any group, of a platoon, a battalion, a country, is not based on worshiping at the altar of diversity or separateness. Nope, on the contrary. They've learned by experiencing firsthand what our immigrant ancestors understood as they left their homeland without hope and forged a nation that is full of hope and once was proud to be called a melting pot. Marines learned, our service members have learned, that we are best when we are stitched together as a people by a shared sense of history, values, hopes, and dreams that unite us as opposed to separate us. Marines have learned to their DNA the fundamental truths upon which this country was made great, that it's not about the color of your skin, but about the character within. That it's not about where in the world you came from, but all about why you came here. That it's not about the God you worship, but that you will respect and even fight for the right of your neighbor to venerate any God he or she pleases. That it's not about individual achievement, but all about achieving together as a people for the common good. That there is an exceptionalism about America, and we should cherish who we are and why we are extraordinary. And what of the families who raised and nurtured them? You know, in my own case, when I walked in to tell my mom and dad a long, long time ago that I joined the Marines, I think my parents had the same reaction most parents do. Where in the hell did that come from? What are you thinking of? The Marines. I think every family member that has heard that particular outburst, whether it was at the kitchen table or at dinner or just in a random comment one day, had that very same response. But what all of our families have come to understand is the pride and somehow the sense that we did the right thing when we raised kids that were willing to join the armed forces or some of the other service organizations to serve. And aside from everything else that these families may have to deal with, they're incredibly proud of the commitment of their sons and daughters when they made that decision to join the Corps. And if we didn't have these young men and women to do exactly that, to act on these issues that we face today, I believe our struggle against the British Empire well over 200 years ago would not have been a success. Slavery in our country would never have been eradicated. The Nazis would have triumphed. The death camps never liberated and eliminated. Millions more would have died. Communism would have never been defeated. And today, the high tide of Islamic extremism and intolerance that Osama bin Laden himself said would go on forever was ended by the kind of men and women that we speak of tonight. So at the end of the day, I would just offer to you that on this 239th anniversary of our Corps, the war is not over yet. Things will continue. And what the best thing that we as Americans can understand is so long as we have young men and women willing to raise their right hand, swear to their God and to their country that to their deaths they will protect us, that this republic, that this experiment we understand is the United States of America, whose assurance is not guaranteed, but with men and women who are willing to raise their right hand and defend this country, I think we are safe and will be for generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I will end there and just simply say, Semper Fidelis, always faithful. Long live the United States and success to the Marines. Thank you very much.
Traditionally, regardless of location, Marines pause to observe their birthday by sharing a cake and usually a holiday meal. A sword is used to cut the cake as a reminder that we are a band of warriors committed to carrying the sword so that our nation may live in peace. The first piece of cake is presented to our guest of honor in recognition of his outstanding service to our country. The second piece of cake is presented to the eldest Marine present this evening, demonstrating the honor and respect accorded to the experience and seniority. Representing the oldest Marine tonight is Major George W. Parker, Jr., United States Marine Corps retired, born 19 October 1918. The third piece of cake is given to the eldest Marine to pass the youngest Marine present, symbolizing the passing of traditions from eldest to younger. The youngest Marine present is Corporal Desiron K. Wren from Dallas, Texas. Corporal Wren was born September 8, 1992, and graduated from MCRD San Diego on June 15, 2011. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for retirement of the colors.
Present! Sword!
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us tonight. I want to again thank Erich Stratmann, Richard Evans, Rachelle Perry, and Nova Jimenez for a wonderful musical program. Thank you again for beautiful music. I'd like to also thank the 23rd Marine Regiment who put on the show and the color guard and the sword detail and the cake cutting. I would like to also thank General Kelly, as well as this wonderful staff at the Marines Memorial Club who has put this together, as well as what you're about to experience upstairs. Thank you.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we will fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for